Hello there, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Welcome everyone. Today is September the 15th, 3:35 Rio de Janeiro time. I can see there are some of our friends already here, and we have already 4 likes. Thank you so much, everyone. Your likes are really appreciated, and they do help our content to be found more easily by people just like you. And before we see some of the questions here in our chat window, I would like to share a couple of things from my recent consultations here at the firm. So one of our clients, he's actually from Portugal, and he was explaining to me the reasoning behind his choice to move to Brazil. So he is a kind of like an international guy. His 2 kids, they study in the Netherlands. And of course, as you know, Portugal is part of the European Union. So he's always traveling across the countries. He works for the SWIFT system. I'm not sure if any of you know about the SWIFT system. The SWIFT system is like one of the main systems worldwide to allow money transfer across the countries. And he works, I'm not sure if he works still or he worked for the SWIFT organization, but he was, actually making a great point about moving to Brazil. And his point is like, even though he loves Portugal, he still has properties in Portugal. He thinks that Brazil is like, the best place out of all alternatives to invest for the long term. Not only because Brazil has continental dimensions, but if you think about like the BRICS, and in particular Brazil, is well positioned to grow economically, right? Like nowadays we have the United States. The United States has some, huge debt, but of course is going to probably remain as the number 1 country from an economic perspective for many decades to come. But Brazil is like, if you invest in Brazil, is like you are entering this, opportunity early on still, because there is so much potential for growth. Talking about, the size of Brazil, another interesting thing, like we were comparing Brazil to the European Union, we just recorded a video comparing the Brazilian digital nomad visa to the Portuguese digital nomad visa. And of course, we know that Brazil is bigger than the European Union, but what I didn't know personally, maybe you do know about it, is that Brazil is actually bigger than twice the size of the entire European Union, meaning that if you double the size of European Union, it's going to still fit within the Brazilian territory. So really interesting piece of information, which is something new to me. All right, I see here Moses. Welcome, Moses. Moses says, good afternoon, sir. Good to see you here, Moses. Oliuni, bom dia. Welcome, Oliuni. I believe Oliuni is already our client. If it is the same Oliuni, happy to see you over here, Oliuni. If not, still happy to see you over here, Oliuni. We also have Kevin Kirkendall. Welcome, Kevin. We have a Double D. Welcome, Double D. It has been a while. All right. I can see some familiar faces over here, some new ones. And let's get started with the participations in our chat window. Moses is asking, what for 8 years before getting naturalized after investing? It is too long, while some who just gave birth got in 1 year. That's not a fair deal. I hear, Moses, and I think I have some good news for you. And just so other people know a little bit about the background for Moses' question. Moses' question is pretty much like, if you give birth in Brazil, after a single year, you could potentially apply for citizenship. And that's going to be the same thing for those who marry a Brazilian national. Just a single year in the country, as long as you speak fluent Portuguese, you write and you read like fluent Portuguese, you could, in theory, apply for the Brazilian citizenship in just 1 year. In practical terms, it's going to take longer because you're going to need to sit for the language exam. There are usually just 2 exams per year. You need to wait for the results. You need to organize paperwork. So more realistically, it's going to take you a couple of years, but just like Moses said, pretty fast. Now, if you are investing in Brazil, you're not going to have access to what we call the fast track. And under the investment route, there are 2 theories, right? Like there is one theory, at the beginning, you're going to get like the temporary residency for 4 years. After you renew the residency, then you're going to get access to the permanent residency, meaning there is no limit in terms of how long you can stay in Brazil. And there are 2 different interpretations. One of the interpretations is that after 4 years of temporary residency, you cannot apply for the residency, meaning you would need to wait for an additional 4 years, and this time of permanent residency, to them be able to apply for the citizenship. Okay, so there are those 2 types of interpretation. But the good news, Moses, is that there are a lot of people being able to secure the citizenship after just 4 years, okay? And so the current interpretation is that even though the initial 4 years are going to be of temporary residency, at least from the R&M card's perspective, the nature of this residency is still of a permanent residency, right? So kind of confusing. It is temporary 4 years, but the nature of it is of a higher level, meaning after just 4 years, even though you get in the temporary residency, you still have a shot at the citizenship. All right, Moses? So there you go. There is a pretty good chance you could secure the citizenship after just 4 years. We say a pretty good shot because in immigration, you can never guarantee something, right? Particularly because of this more conservative understanding that you should wait for 8 years for the citizenship. So the way we present it to our clients, like when we have a consultation, is 4 years, you take a shot. If your application is approved, good for you, you have the citizenship. If for some reason there is an understanding like valid at that point in time that you do not qualify, then yes, you would need to wait the 8 years. All right, I see Ronnie Dio. Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome, Ronnie. Good to see you over here. D. Gibbs. All right, I see we are warming up. A lot of people here. Welcome, D. Gibbs. Now I have participation by Kevin Kirkendall. Hello, boa tarde. Boa tarde, Kevin. Do you know what is the maximum amount of money that can be sent to Brazil in a single transaction to the CPF of a person with salary income without a rendimento delay requirement? All right, so Kevin is asking how much money you can send it to a person without, like a delay requirement for rendimento. And what Kevin has probably experienced in the past, it is something like this. Like he sent an amount of money and, like for those who do not know, every time you send a substantial sum to Brazil, this money is not going to show up in the recipient's bank account like it happens if you send the money to Europe, if you send the money, across the states in the United States. You just send the money is going to show up in the recipient's bank account. That doesn't work. That doesn't happen in Brazil for large amounts. So in Brazil, if you just send the money to someone's bank account, and this amount, is a substantial amount, what's going to happen is the recipient bank in Brazil is going to receive the money and it's going to hold the money for a whole compliance process. And that's what Kevin means by, rendimento delay requirement. And rendimento means, like proof of income, a tax return. They are going to ask, actually, the bank receiving exchange the currency is going to actually ask for several documents. So it's not just a single document. And therefore, particularly when we are handling like real estate transactions, which naturally are going to require large amounts of money, there's going to be a need for this compliance process. So in our services, like a good chunk of the activities we're going to handle for a client's transaction are going to be related to the currency exchange, so we can get a better rate for the client, so we can handle the compliance process before the client actually sends the money. And third, and in my opinion, most important one, is going to be to be able to release the money only on the day of the closing. Because in Brazil, there are no escrow accounts and there are no title agencies. There is no title insurance. So pretty important for you to send the money in a compliant manner, in a way that you're going to get the best rate possible. And most importantly, that is not going to go into the seller's pocket way before the seller actually signs the deed of sale. I hope that makes sense. Now, answering Kevin's question. So, Kevin, in the Brazilian regulatory framework, up to $10,000, the Brazilian government is going to allow the so-called fintechs or technology financial companies to handle transactions for up to $10,000 without too much paperwork. Okay, so if I'm gonna give you an example. Wise, right? Like TransferWise, I'm sure everyone, or pretty much, most people are gonna be familiar with TransferWise, which is just Wise nowadays, Wise.com. So for up to $10,000, you don't need to show any documents at all. You just need the CPF, which is the tax ID of the recipient part in Brazil. Okay, so the amount of money is $10,000. After $10,000, in theory, every single entity or bank in Brazil is going to need to do like a paperwork review, a compliance process before authorizing the currency exchange and release of the funds into the recipient's bank account. All right, Kevin, I'm sure you have many follow-up questions. Feel free to keep them coming, all right? Okay. So we have actually a follow-up question by Aaron. Remitly cut me off 50,000 reais on 30 days to my CPF. Yes, Aaron, so that's roughly 10,000 US dollars, right? Like with the current rate, it could be 54,000 reais. But usually, it's going to be usually 50,000 reais or 10,000 US dollars. Now, a follow-up question that I'm going to have to my answer is going to be, all right, so does it mean I can send $10,000 every single month? Because if that's the case, then $10,000 times 12 months, meaning I could send $120,000 in a year, right? But just by fractioning the remittance. And the answer is no, you cannot, all right? Like if you do it, I guarantee month 2 or month 3, Wise or Remitly, right? Aaron is actually asking about Remitly. Remitly works pretty much like Wise. And both of them, they rely on the Brazilian Central Bank framework to decide how they are going to handle their compliance process, right? And the bottom line is like the Brazilian central bank framework, they don't say $10,000 per month or per year. They just say that for transactions of up to $10,000, you don't need like the whole compliance thing. However, the fintechs such as Remitly and Wise, they are going to have this one interpretation. If I see that you're sending a bunch of remittances, I'm going to understand that you are trying to circumvent the Brazilian central bank framework, and therefore I'm gonna stop you on your tracks. Okay, so that's the reason here. or that's the reasoning here. Like if you are sending every month, like the maximum amount to the same person, I guarantee second or third month remitted, or otherwise they are gonna shut down your account, they are gonna pause your remittance, and this is gonna bring a lot of trouble to you, right? So whenever I have, for instance, right, like the same Portuguese client I had a consultation with on Friday, and he was asking this very same question. Listen, I need to send the money to Brazil. I sold a property abroad, and I need to take money to Brazil. I said, listen, if you're gonna take a lot of money, you're gonna have trouble, because Brazil pretty much does not want you to bring a lot of money unless you have a pretty good reason, such as you buying a property in Brazil, or you are now a new resident of Brazil and you're bringing money from abroad, because now Brazil is going to be your new home, right? So you do need an explanation like that. And I said, in the meantime, what you could do, you're going to send every month, you can send some amount, but don't max out. Don't max out. Otherwise, they are going to freeze your account. So what he could do, let's say first month he's coming to Brazil, he could send like 10,000 US dollars. Second month he's gonna send, I don't know, $2,000 or $3,000. Third month he's gonna send $5,000, and this way he can use the fintech without triggering a freeze. All right, so that was my recommendation to him. And of course, when time comes for him to send like a large amount, then he would hire our firm to make sure that this is done under the best currency exchange rate possible, and without like those blackouts, like when there is a compliance process. Particularly if you send in the money to a regular everyday bank in Brazil, it's pretty common for them to sit on your transaction for 2-3 weeks, and after that decline handling the transaction, and then sending your money back abroad, potentially taking an additional couple of weeks. All right, okay, Moses, have you heard Having by You project by Levi in Bella Vista? Please give me an idea of the prices I should start negotiating per square meter for a studio on the 15th to 16th floor. I don't know about this project, Moses, but I am, surprise, surprise. I was born in Bella Vista, right? I was born in this particular neighborhood at the hospital, July the 9th, right? 9 de julho in Portuguese. I was born in this neighborhood, okay? Bella Vista has two very different sides of it. There is one side which is like super upscale, which is closer to Avenida Paulista, closer to MASP. Avenida Paulista is known as the financial district of São Paulo. So that's the upscale part of Bella Vista. And there is another side which is the exact opposite, all right? It's a neighborhood for migrants coming from the northeast of Brazil and other underdeveloped areas in the country. So, super interesting. Like, you're going to have these two opposite realities colliding in Bella Vista, okay? Now, I by heart, Moses, it's difficult for me to tell you, what type of price per square meter you should offer. It would depend on the quality of the development, on the specific street in Bella Vista where you are buying the property. And even if you have all of those variables, I am still unable to give you a specific per square meter price, all right? Like, it just varies substantially across the city, and it is difficult to give you this type of, information, without a further review. All right, Kevin. Okay, thanks. So 10,000 US dollars maximum, that's what it is on Wise website, exactly. But I read otherwise in other places. For example, Western Union internal max seems to be $3,000. Yes, Kevin. So it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, because the Brazilian central bank, they are telling you like how things are going to be reviewed by the regulatory entity that is the Brazilian central bank, right? That doesn't preclude players from actually enforcing something more stringent, right? So Western Union probably, Western Union is super prone to fraud, right? Not by design or because they don't do a good job. I would say the opposite. Western Union has been around for much longer than any other the fintechs. So they've been around for a while for a reason. Because I think that whenever there is a problem, they try to mitigate that problem with some measures just like this one you mentioned. Even though the Brazilian central bank says that you can have up to 10,000 US dollars without a full-fledged degree of compliance, they're still going to enforce $3,000, probably to limit the losses of people who, unfortunately, like there is a lot of, people, who end up being deceived by scammers, and they are going to send money usually by Western Union, right? So Western Union, by reducing the amount to $3,000, it means they are both respecting the maximum of $10,000, and they are, I would say, being more protective of, people using Western Union for that matter. All right, Kevin. Okay, now we have Didi. What are your thoughts on Brazilian government recent banning of platforms like X? This is what the present administration in the US is wanting to take away our rights to free speech. All right, Didi. So I did comment on the ban on X for a while. And just going straightforward, to the answer, I am against the ban. And now the dynamics of the ban, they are kind of, they go substantially further than just like, rights to free speech. And the dynamics, if I could summarize it just to explain to you what happened is like this. For a while, for some reason, the Brazilian Supreme Court, and in my opinion, they should be occupied with, higher level legal decisions. But for some reason, they have been targeting specific blogs and specific politicians' content, right? Both on their websites, on our social media. The Brazilian Supreme Court, believe it or not, they take the time to keep an eye, okay? And once they find the content that they consider to be fake news, they are going to send orders. They are going to send orders to the social media companies to take that content down. All right, and these orders, they are going to be respected, and they are going to be enforced by Google. They are going to be enforced by Facebook. They are going to be enforced by Instagram and others. Right now, X, at a certain point, they said, hold on, you're targeting mostly politicians and content from the right. You're not doing the same thing with the left, right? And there should be some level of balance, and particularly the way that the orders were being sent to X, right, the former Twitter, and particularly Musk, he said, listen, this is not legal. Like, you guys are actually targeting the right, and you are actually being politically motivated to chase and to hurt the right. Okay, so there was X, or Elon Musk / X understanding, and therefore we're not gonna follow your orders. Right now, you're dealing with the Brazilian Supreme Court, and they have all the power that you can have in the Brazilian space. Okay, so eventually, the Brazilian Supreme Court started to fine X, and increasing the fine amounts to several dozens of thousands of dollars per order that X was not following. Okay, and eventually X said, "Listen, if I just keep, getting those fines, I could, break. Like I could go out of business, not only in Brazil but probably worldwide, because, the fine is like the more you're being fined and you're not following the orders, the higher those fines they are gonna get. So eventually, Elon Musk said, you know what? I'm gonna withdraw every single employee that X has in the country, because this way the Brazilian Supreme Court is not going to be able, first to seize my assets, and second, to send my employees to jail, because that's another tool that any court, for the matter, is not just the Supreme Court, should, like if someone doesn't follow the law, the court can say, all right, you're not going to follow, I'm going to send you to jail, right? That's common, like in Brazil, for things across the board. Again, it's not just for this dispute in particular, right? So Musk said, we don't have more employees in Brazil. We don't have an office, and there it is. There is X on the internet, and that's it. So what a specific ministry in the Brazilian Supreme Court, whose name is Alexandre de Moraes, he said, all right, now I'm going to tell you to have a legal representative in the country, meaning a specific person who's going to be responsible for X activities in the country. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to, operate in Brazil. Now, this particular decision is 100% correct, because traditionally in Brazil, no company, and that's good for you guys to know, like if you want to set up a business in Brazil, because you are a foreign citizen, you gotta have a Brazilian resident operating as a legal representative, right? So this decision by itself, it was 100% legal. It wasn't like, trying to, hurt X. It was basically just following the law. And Musk, not surprisingly, said he wasn't going to appoint someone, and that was the trigger for the Brazilian Supreme Court to ban X. All right, but again, if you look like not only at this specific decision, but if you look at the reason why X was not following the orders in the first place, that's where the problem really is. Now, I would agree that there is probably a lot of fake news that was targeted by the Supreme Court, but what I don't agree is like the dual standards that were being used to identify fake news. Like it looks to me that the reasonings or the dynamics or the filters to identify fake news, they were actually targeting the right. They were not targeting the left. Okay, so that's where the problem resides. Now, again, the decision to remove X because of the lack of a legal representative in the country, it is something actually common and based in Brazilian law. All right, so I hope there was a good summary of the whole dispute. There are many more nuances. There are many more nuances to this dispute. And if you guys think it's interesting enough, or if you guys have questions, let me know and I will be pleased to discuss. All right, Kevin. Kevin has a follow-up question. Wise also says maximum of $10,000 per 365 days. Is that if that is your SMU diploma on the wall? Glad to meet a fellow alumnium. So nice to meet you, Kevin. That's an SMU diploma. I actually went to Dedman School of Law in Dallas. And now let me know, what did you study at SMU, Kevin? So glad to follow, to meet a fellow alumnium. Absolutely. Really nice to know about that, Kevin. Aaron says, I am in a condo finished by CPN Engenharia a few months ago. The quality isn't great. All right, Aaron. One company is developing much of my neighborhood. A. Yoshi. Are they generally a good builder? Better than are they generally a good builder better than CPN? So, Aaron, there is something for you to know. The developer is not always the same entity actually doing the construction work. All right, so you're seeing a builder, CPN, the Yoshi. I don't know if they are using the same builder. Usually, you're gonna have like a company handling the incorporation. Okay, you're gonna have another entity handling the engineering, and then you're gonna have another entity actually doing the construction work, right? Now, if your problem with the construction is actually like the standard of like the material being used, and not the construction work by itself, when we're talking about like the standard of the materials, then usually it tends to be the same across the board. Okay, it tends to be across the board, but my knowledge doesn't go as far as to tell you, like which builder or quality or each builder or incorporator would have like a better standard. Okay, many times within the same incorporator, you're gonna see different levels of quality for the materials depending on the neighborhood where the project is sitting. Okay, traditionally something that you're gonna see happening a lot is like for the more upscale neighborhoods in a city, the higher end the materials are gonna be, and I'm not sure if the word is the more professional, but the more recognized the engineering firm and the builder are gonna be as well. All right, Aaron, but I hear what you're saying, like particularly in Sao Paulo, there is a lot of construction. Activity going on, and sometimes there are not enough professionals or leading professionals to be present in every single development, and as a consequence, you start to see again not as professional like engineers or builders operating in a given development. All right, Aaron. DD says you are correct. Is one-sided, catering to the left, a concern for people wanting to get away from American. All right, from American politics. Like I see what you're saying, DD. It kinds of rings a bell, right? Like, I mean, and that's so common in Brazil, like for so many things. Like there is a certain reality going on in the United States, and for some reason, maybe we Brazilians, we love the United States so much that we're going to replicate pretty much what's going on in the United States, right? Let me give you an example. When President Trump was elected, we had President Bolsonaro, right? And then President Trump, after one term, left the power, and President Bolsonaro, after one term, left the power, and then more left-leaning governments took place. Same thing in the United States, same thing in Brazil, and it is so interesting when you compare realities in the United States to the Brazilian reality, right? Like, so I hear you. All right, Kevin says computer science. Congratulations, Kevin. Very interesting. We both went to SMU, but just to make sure I'm not misrepresenting my experience at SMU, I had the pleasure to be at SMU for just a single year, because in my case, I actually had like my whole law education in Brazil, where, by the way, we go to law school for 5 years. It's not like in the United States. In the United States, for those of you who do not know, the law degree is like you complete in 3 years. Okay, but there are a couple of other differences. Like in Brazil, we can go straight to law. In the United States, you must have an undergrad first, and then you're going to have the law degree as a continuation of your college education. And in the United States, it's also common for you to study full-time. And in Brazil, we have 5 years, right, of legal education. But we usually going to have like a single period, right? Like, so students in Brazil, they are going to go to law school. They would study like from 7 a.m. to 12, or they're going to study from, I don't know, like 7 p.m. like to 11:30, and this is going to be for 5 years. So I went to law school in Brazil, but in order for me to sit for a bar exam in the United States, I would need a full year of legal education in the United States to basically understand how law works in the United States. So that's why I went to SMU and I studied for a full year, and it was an amazing degree. It was a master's, actually. It was an amazing degree. I can tell you that because I did pass my 2 bar exams in the United States in my first sit. Okay, so, for those of you who do not know, and I'm not saying that, like to diminish like Vice President Kamala Harris, but she passed her bar exam at the second try, okay? And I did pass in my first try, so probably because of the really good education I had at SMU, Kevin. All right, we have Mustafa Shamin, boss. What is your email to send your official inquiry for your assistance? Waiting, much appreciated. Like this joke, Mustafa is just kidding by saying boss. But that's very interesting because in Brazil, the use of this term boss is super common. So let's say if you are, if you are in Brazil and you're gonna, you buy a property and then you're gonna have a renovation, everybody who's gonna work with you, not probably the engineer or the engineer or the architect, but everyone else in the construction crew, they're gonna call you boss. Okay, so it's super funny, and of course you're not the boss of the employees, particularly if you're hiring a firm to do the construction. Still, people are gonna call you boss. Like in Portuguese, we say chefe. It's closer to the Spanish word jefe, right? In Portuguese, we say chefe. And but that's so funny because, like, of course, like I am in the Brazil construction space, incorporation, like we have so many activities in this area, in addition to representing our clients. And it is super common for people to call me boss, but not because I am their boss, but just because it is somewhat of a custom in Brazil. But now, Mustafa, I'm going to share here. I don't do the onboarding, okay, of here at the firm. We actually have like a very decent and stable team here at the firm. So you can send an email to info@oliveiralawyers.com. Most of the onboarding is done by Justin. And Justin, she's our gatekeeper, okay? She's our gatekeeper. She keeps things, working organizedly. She's going to usually give you an idea about cost. And if you're serious about working with us, then she's going to recommend a consultation. It is a paid consultation, by the way. You have the paid consultation. And then the next step is for us to present you like a service agreement based on what we discussed. You sign the service agreement, you pay an initial retainer, and there you go. Like, we're going to be working with you. Yeah, Mustafa says, jefe de chefe, obrigado. Yeah, so Mustafa seems to know how things work in Brazil. The chefe/boss way of, like addressing other people when you are providing a service, even though you're not their boss, is very common. Nice touch, Mustafa. All right, so I said, gatekeepers, just sharing a curious story about a consultation. Not a consultation, it was actually a client who was, or not a client, it was a prospect, right? She wanted us to represent her in a real estate transaction in Rio de Janeiro, but she said, like in her emails, and Justin sent it to me just so I could see, like the communication. And she was saying, well, people said I should pay 2% of, a 2% fee for a lawyer to represent me in a real estate transaction, and that's what I'm going to pay you, right? And then, not satisfied with that, she said, and taking into consideration that I'm also paying, the taxes, I'm paying, all of the fees that I'm going to need to pay to get my property in Copacabana, Rio de Janeiro, and therefore I cannot pay I cannot pay anything else on top of the 2%, right? And so I understand. Like, I mean, people have all the right to negotiate fees, but for those of you who do not know, like our standard fee to represent, in a real estate transaction A to Z, right? Like from doing the due diligence, contract, assisting with currency exchange, working throughout the closing, issuing a new title, all of those things is actually 5%. And I understand, like, I mean, in Brazil, it's very common for lawyers, like once they bring a case such as real estate, they are going to maybe, be in touch with you like 10 or 20 times over the course of a transaction, right? Lawyers in Brazil, generally, they are not like lawyers in the United States, which usually are going to be communicating with a client from the same level. In Brazil, for some reason, lawyers, they think they're very important. They are not going to actually, work much with the client. They're going to say, yes, contract is good, go sign. Or, they're going to say, you know what, you need to send money, go after this currency exchange company, go there and figure things out. So, 2%, if you're providing this type of service, I think you are overpaying, all right? But when you work with us, and then we have like, about 200 points of work on your transaction, then 5% is actually cheap. So it's all a matter of how you are being provided the service that you're getting. And if you need like the 2% service, there are, dozens, or if not hundreds of lawyers in Brazil out there to help you. Now, if you need our service costs 5%, and then you need to decide if you need our service or, a different type of service, right? I'm not saying that our service is perfect and everyone else's services are not good. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that we provide a different type of service. And if you want our type of service, then you need to pay our fee, right? So more like venting here, but also explaining the different, perspectives on legal service in Brazil. All right, Moses, if I buy 3 properties with a total investment of 1.3 million reais and decided to pay 1 million reais through the currency exchange bank for investment purposes, can I pay the balance through other cheaper exchange means? So Moses, if you're buying the property, right, like without the help of an office like ours, most probably you're going to be sending the money to the seller's bank, okay, to the seller's bank. And sellers' banks are going to be usually Banco do Brasil, Banco Itaú, Banco Bradesco, or Banco Santander, right? So usually sellers are going to have a bank account with one of those banks. And you are not going to be able to pick, the currency exchange bank because you're dealing with the seller. And there is no one to handle that piece of the currency exchange on your behalf, okay? Now, if you want to know which players work in this arena of the currency exchange, just for the sake of knowing, you can access this link that I'm sharing over here. It shows 175 different entities capable of handling currency exchange in Brazil. The ones we usually work with are going to be the bancos de câmbio, okay, meaning currency exchange banks, all right? Now, I don't usually recommend for people to handle those things by themselves. Not surprisingly, every now and then, when people try to do things by themselves, they get hurt. And then it's not on us, right? But I'm sharing those pieces of information more to illustrate the work that is done through a real estate property acquisition in Brazil. All right, Kevin says, great, glad to hear that you passed the bar exam the first time. Thanks for the law degree process in Brazil and SMU Picture 2, interesting. Thanks for all the good info today. Very helpful. You're pretty welcome, Kevin. Good to see you again. Keep the participation coming. All right. So, just like I was sharing at the beginning of our live stream, a lot of activity from Europe in Brazil, particularly from, Portuguese fellows. Like for Portuguese people, Brazil represents also a very unique opportunity. First, because we also speak Portuguese, right? Like most of you should know, like we don't speak Spanish, we speak Portuguese in Brazil. So for nationals of Portugal, when they come to Brazil, they are able to hit the ground running because, even though we have like different accents, and it's not uncommon for us to have different words, addressing a subject, is still pretty easy for us to communicate with our fellow citizens in Portugal, right? But the point is, Brazil represents a really interesting opportunity because of the potential of growth, because of the size of the land, right? Like again, our Portuguese client, he was saying he just sold like an apartment in Lisbon, like, a regular type of apartment in Lisbon for 1 million euros, okay? With 1 million euros, you can easily buy a beachfront apartment in Brazil, right? You can pick your neighborhood, probably with a few exceptions in Rio de Janeiro, right? Like in Rio de Janeiro, for those of you who do not know, like certain neighborhoods like Leblon and Ipanema, there are others, but these are the two main ones. Like with even $1 million, you cannot buy a beachfront property, right? Like $1 million or maybe even a couple of $1 million, you're not gonna buy a beachfront property. But there are so many other neighborhoods, even in Rio de Janeiro, in which with €1 million, you're gonna buy amazing properties, right? So that shows the difference in terms of, the continental dimensions of Brazil and how much more you can buy in Brazil than you could buy, elsewhere. All right. The 552 has an interesting question, 3 Brazilian dishes. So, there is one is not exactly a dish. The 552 is actually, fresh fish. I did share in another live stream about Ceará, Fortaleza, in the city of Fortaleza, right? Fortaleza, Mucuripe Beach. Okay, so in Fortaleza, Mucuripe Beach, there is a very unique experience when it comes to, Brazilian culinary, and it goes like this. If you go to this beach, they have a marketplace by the beach. Okay, so the marketplace is in the beach, and you go over there and you do your shopping for fish, and the most amazing thing is like you buy the fish, and then you take to one of there are I'm gonna guess like 4 or 5 different kitchens in the marketplace, and those kitchens, they are gonna cook or they are gonna fry, they are gonna prepare your fish on the spot. So to me, whenever I compare like food in Brazil with food in the United States, sometimes you are eating a meal that was done with ingredients that were harvested or collected or gathered several months ago. So in Brazil, it's like you're gonna eat fish that was caught 3 hours ago. I mean, it's an extremely interesting experience. You're gonna realize how tasteful fresh fish is. It doesn't compare to any type of fish you would eat in the United States, right? Like if you go in the United States, I don't know in which state you're going, but you're most probably buying fish at a supermarket, and this fish was caught, if not weeks, maybe months ago. And in Brazil, you can eat fish that was caught a few hours ago. It's an amazing experience. So first one, I would say Fortaleza Mucuripe. Now, I would say a signature dish in Brazil, it's gonna be the feijoada, right? I'm sure everybody knows about feijoada. Feijoada also has an amazing background to it. It was actually developed by slaves in approximately like the 18th century in Brazil. And the way that the slaves would prepare this amazing dish, they would collect like rest of food from their owners to prepare this dish. And usually it would be rest of pork meat. So they would, take like the head, like, the paws, like the tail, or just those pieces that the slave owners would not want to eat. And then they would prepare this mix up of, pork parts mixed with black beans, okay? And like due to the slaves' creativity, and after that, of course, this dish was incorporated in the Brazilian culture at large, and nowadays is the number one, like signature dish in Brazil, the feijoada. Feijoada is this mix of pork parts mixed with black beans. Is an amazing dish. And usually there is a specific or two specific days of the week that you're gonna eat feijoada. Is not for every day. You're gonna eat feijoada in either Wednesdays or Saturdays. Okay? There is that to it. Like if you wanna eat in other days, people are gonna think it's weird. Like because it's traditional. Every Wednesday when you go to a restaurant, they are gonna probably have the feijoada. And every restaurant is going to have a different version of feijoada, but they will have the feijoada on Wednesdays. Saturdays also common, but not, in my opinion, as common as it is feijoada on a Wednesday, okay? The third one, and this is one that I specifically love, and it's going to be pizzas from São Paulo, okay? Like pizza, right? Of course, it's not a Brazilian dish, it's like an Italian dish. But for some reason, it was perfected in São Paulo. And in my opinion, like when I have a pizza in Europe, like there are some very good pizzas in Europe, like France, Portugal, more like Italy, France, also amazing pizzas. But pizzas from São Paulo, in my opinion, they are unique, they are unbeatable, and they are very creative, very tasteful. It's amazing. Like everywhere you go in São Paulo state, right? Not so much in other states. Like you're gonna find some very sophisticated pizzerias. Usually they are gonna have a wood based oven, and they are gonna craft those pizzas to perfection. Like they're gonna have always fresh ingredients, and it's an amazing experience. I love every time I have an opportunity to eat pizza. I'm all for it, okay? But again, it's not the same pizza that you have in the United States. Sometimes when I try to eat pizza in the United States, because of my experience with pizzas from São Paulo, I'm gonna have a hard time, all right? It just tastes, I don't know, like cardboard. And the pizzas from São Paulo, they are so amazing that once you taste it, every other pizza is gonna taste like unworthy, okay? But there you go. Another interesting thing for pizzas, like we don't have a special day for pizzas, but there is something very unique to Brazil, which is like you don't find pizza to buy during lunchtime. You only find pizzas to buy during evening time, okay? Like, so if you try to eat pizza around 2 or 3 p.m., you're not gonna find pizzas anywhere, even in São Paulo, which is for sure, the place in which pizzas are more popular than anywhere else. All right, okay, we have Fuzi Priming LLC. Welcome, Fuzil, right? Welcome here, Fuzil. Oi, boa tarde. If you are wanting to have a consultation and work with your law firm, is it the best method through your website? WhatsApp listed there. So for the consultation, we have a link on our website. I'm going to share the link over here. Through this link, you can pick a day and a time of your convenience. We do charge for our consultations. We don't have free consultations, but if you hire our services later on, this amount is going to be applied in full as a credit. Okay, for you guys to know, like we usually have a large number of emails per day. We are unable to offer a free consultation to everyone. And then we have the paid consultation that's applied as a full credit once you hire our services. The 552 says, thanks for sharing, Mr. Oliveira. My pleasure, the 552. Keep those interesting questions coming. It does lighten up our meetings over here. I really appreciate. I'm going to ask for you guys to, for those who haven't done so, to please like our live stream. That helps with our content being found by other foreign citizens just like you. And we are now reaching the end of our live stream for today. But don't forget, we're going to meet again on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we're going to meet at 12:30 p.m. Rio de Janeiro time. I'm going to be here for you guys. So don't forget to join us and have any follow-up questions asked on Wednesday. You guys have a blessed rest of your Sunday and see you on Wednesday.